Scott, we are looking at the brand new Hyundai Elantra Sport.
I'd say it smells like brand new paint. It's got to be brand new.
Yeah, it's only got like 1,500 miles on it. So just give it to me straight. What do you think of the looks of this thing?
It's not bad.
What do you think of the front?
I hate it.
Why?
I'm so sick of seeing that grill, but other than that.
So with the Sport, they've changed the front bumper, the front grille, the front headlight design, and you have HIDs.
Well, it's a good thing they didn't change the rear headlight design.
Yeah, well, they did. They changed the rear fascia, if that's even possible. You have HIDs in here, and I think that's really the only strange part about this car compared to the competition, because everybody else is going to LED headlights, and they're still using HIDs. They changed the LED lighting in the front bumper as well. They've changed the direction of it, which, whatever. Scott, when we come to the side of the Elantra, they've changed a few things. They've given it these sporty-ass side skirts. And
the only thing they're missing is a little cutout, have the exhaust flowing out there.
Oh,
that's real sporty.
You can modify that.
Just put a fake pipes.
Fake pipes? Yeah, that's a good idea. So these wheels, they have almost the perfect offset to fill out the wheel wells. It looks really good on this car. I think just the subtle changes here make it, again, it's more of a mature looking car. They're not trying to add this element of cheesiness to it. What did you say about the back?
See how it swoops up like that? It looks like some kind of bummer or something.
It does kind of look like a bummer, but then again...
I mean, obviously not the tail end, I'm just saying that.
The way that the angle is?
Right.
I think it looks like a Fusion, personally.
Well, like I said, it looks like a Fusion because you see that grill and you're like, oh, Fusion. That's all you can think of.
We come to the back and you realize you had your fly open the whole time.
I thought it was a little cool in there.
That's a ventilation port.
It's all right, it happens.
Much like the dual tips that you have on this exhaust here. And at least they didn't split it out to two physical exhausts.
Dual spouts on both sides.
Oh, that would be really nice.
One for each cylinder. We should have done it like a Corvette, 4 across the center.
Oh, yeah. That's all they need. But they might reserve that for the new N line of high-performance cars. But in the back of the Elantra, again, it's just subtle changes. The bumper's different. You have the Sport logo. It's just not totally in your face for what this car is, and I think it's going to work for most people. We've already seen all of this. The only thing that's different really here in the front is two things to note. You have a turbocharged motor, which obviously changes. The mounting points, some of the subframe connecting spots. They've changed the wheels. The brakes, the actual brake rotors are 1.5 inches bigger in the front.
I'll say it looks like big brakes.
Yeah, they did increase the brake size, and the dampers and spring rates have been revised, obviously, because you have a different motor, different weight, and then also to match the changes in the rear end, which is where we're going to focus most of our attention.
Of course. I like how they put, man, you could do this out.
When we looked at the Veloster, I was a little concerned that when they started doing all this aero panel stuff, they would make it difficult to get at. But clearly, they just gave you holes to get at the oil filter here and the plug.
I don't know why they don't. That Volkswagen, the oil filter's on top. So all you got to get to is the drain plug, which you're going to service the most regular. No, you got to take the whole panel down for a freaking drain plug. So it's 3 across the back and 4 on each side. It's like, really?
Yeah, it's a waste.
I mean, it's just nonsense.
But the good thing is, it's strange because you see some Hyundais and Kias where they make it a pain on the ass to get to this stuff, and then you get to a car like this, and it's like, okay, why not just make a hole in every service panel like this to get to
Or have one of those quick popping ones.
Right. Yeah, easy. Snap it off and you're done. All right, Scott, this is what everybody wants to know about. How is it that they were able to get a independent rear end in here, independent rear suspension, and all the other Elantras have a torsion beam? How did they do it?
Made it very compact.
It is very compact. And you can tell that they had to make, there's some, rear subframe modifications that they had to make to fit this. But overall, it looks extremely logically laid out. You have a long trailing arm, but everything else looks very compact. And one of the best parts about this is they didn't have to sacrifice the damper stroke in the back. There is plenty of stroke in these shocks, which if you look at some of the old Hyundais and Kias, there was like no bump, no travel in any of their dampers, and like the Kia Soul we were in last week, horrendous.
You need to see the ones on the Sentra or the Versa. They're at a freaking 90-degree angle. They're like about that long.
Yeah, they're
It's
really
like,
high quality.
In a solid rear end, it's like, how can that do anything?
I don't think it does. That's why it rides like shit. But this is a really well-sorted suspension. And finally, now that they have a multi-link in the back, this is definitely a transition from old to new. I think they've carried over everything that we liked about the Genesis. Now we're starting to get it into their compact cars, and it's such a massive improvement here. I honestly, the way that this is so sorted, I wouldn't buy a regular Elantra because of this. What?
If they're missing something from the Genesis, they need a U-shaped cutout in the gas tank and a drive shaft coming back here.
You should probably write in and recommend that.
I want rear-wheel drive, or I won't buy it.
I want a rear-wheel drive car, too, from these guys. That's not 5,000 pounds. Really, the only other thing back here to note is one of the things I really liked that they did is gave you a regular single spout exhaust. They didn't do a dual exhaust back here. And you know what that means is you don't have some gimmick with a center-mounted exhaust that takes up all this space where it makes it difficult to mount a hitch for a bike and all that crap. This is more straightforward. And you know what else it doesn't
It
have?
has manual parking brake.
Yes.
Wow.
That is a
Is it
huge
foot pedal
bonus.
or hand
No,
pedal?
it's handbrake.
Oh.
It's one of the nicest things about this too is this is kind of more back to basics, and I think a lot of people are going to like that about it. All right, Scott. So the funny thing is I put this back to back with the Kia Soul Turbo because it's the same motor and transmission. We have the 1.6 liter turbo in here, which is started in the Veloster. And the DCT or dual clutch in here is shared between the Veloster and Kia Soul Turbo now. And in this car, I talked about it while driving, it feels so much slower than the Kia Soul Turbo. And I just can't quite understand why there's such a difference when you get this motor in 3 different cars, because it's felt different to me in each car. I don't know, it's really quick for what it is, but it feels like you want more when you drive it. And I didn't feel that way when I was driving the Kia Soul. It felt like it was a perfect amount of power for that car. In here, well, it is what it is. So maybe some people will tune it or reflash the ECU. We'll see.
Just put a blow-off valve on it. Who cares?
Yeah, and just listen to the noise. It is quick. It is fun to drive. The only thing that this really lacks is a limited slip. I think that's the only thing that's holding it back from being a better performance car. But maybe as they get to the new N series, when they really get to the high performance cars, I think their chassis are ready for it now. Now they just need to figure out how to kind of put this turbo power down without being a one-wheel peel fest. But other than that, I really like this car. It's definitely a surprise. The Hyundai Elantra Sport. When you hear that model designation for almost all manufacturers, it's pretty much marketing, PR nonsense. It means absolutely nothing besides tarting up a car. With the Elantra Sport, I kind of expected the same thing. So let's take a look. The first thing that you're going to notice is the responsiveness of the dual clutch. There is some understeer on this car, but it's extremely cold. But the biggest thing you're going to note, aside from the turbo motor, is how well the suspension is set up on this car. It is night and day from what Hyundai and Kia have been trying to do even 5 years ago. You would never think this is the same company producing a car. And it is such an improvement that I just got out of the new revised Mazda 3, just got out of the Civic, and this has to be one of the, it's one of the most refined and well-dampened compact cars that's in the front-wheel drive segment. I think in some ways it even exceeds the Mazda 3, which is no small feat, because that's really what Mazda focuses all their energy on, is suspension, dynamics, and handling. Now, the only thing that I'm not particularly a fan of, and the thing that you can't absolutely control with a car like this, is understeer. Now you have torque, now you have horsepower getting thrown to these front wheels, and without a limited slip, it's kind of just a little bit messy. Right now, I'm on one of the most choppiest segments of pavement that I can get on driving. And I was in the Kia Soul last week, and the Kia Soul is kind of their last generation suspension with a torsion beam and in the back, and it was a nightmare driving down here. It was to the point where I felt myself getting a headache every time I was on this pavement. And you can tell how much work they put into putting the independent rear in here, how much they've set up the dampers where it is firm and compliant, but they haven't made it like a bouncy house. It doesn't feel like you're getting a sledgehammer hit on every single bump. And then, of course, it translates onto the smooth stuff, into the aggressive turning. It's just such a compliant chassis, and so compliant compared even to the regular Elantra with their torsion beam in there. I wouldn't have any other car. Well, I wouldn't have any other Elantra but this after driving in it. Now, the thing with the DCT is, unfortunately, it doesn't allow you to hold gears. I mean, it allows you to hold gears, but once you hit that shift point, it auto upshifts. And I think that's the big thing that kills it for me here, because if it was able to hold the revs to the red line, this would be a really suitable replacement for the manual trans. But for now, I would definitely opt for the manual transmission version of this car. So you might want to know about brakes. Well, I think for this type of car and the weight of it being front wheel drive and this being kind of a sporty compact, the brakes, the upsizing and the front brakes give you a lot of confidence. I don't see anybody in regular street driving having a problem with this. This is obviously not a track car. I don't think people are going to autocross this, even though you probably could. The brakes are up to task. The pedal pressure feels pretty consistent and confident. I don't have a problem there. My big problem is twofold. Aside from the DCT kind of just doing whatever it wants sometimes, I don't particularly like the steering. Now, they do have a sport mode here, which, like most Hyundai and Kias, livens up the throttle response. It makes the steering heavier, and that's my big problem with it. Unlike the Mazda, where it always feels natural, you get some feedback in it for an electronic steering rack. This is just totally numb. It feels so synthetically over-assisted and just so heavy unnecessarily that I think that would be the only thing that I could say that they really still need to work on now that they kind of got the chassis figured out and the damping and suspension. It's time to work on getting more natural steering feel. All right, Scott, here's the biggest thing with the Elantra Sport, and I've kind of reiterated this during the drive part, underneath. This is finally an evolution of Hyundai and Kia where they have the chassis and the suspension right, completely. For the first time in a compact car, you get in it, you drive it, and you think, this is a perfect combination of what they do in VW, like the VW Golf. It feels solid, it feels refined, and then it gives you some of the driving dynamics that like the Mazda 3 is really good at. This is one of the best compacts in terms of driving by a long stretch. Interior quality, the ergonomics, the fit and finish, and just you don't have a ton of road noise either. It's way above its class. The other part is, as good as the interior is, take a look at the inside. What's the first thing you think about when you look at that interior?
I want to punch that screen.
Well, you're on a different track than I am. But it looks like Hyundai decided that when they designed the interior, they thought, we don't want to offend anybody that's colorblind, because this is the most monochromatic, black and white interior I've ever seen. When you look at the door panels or the door cards, there is zero color in it. And I'm not kidding you, zero color.
That's for when you tint it, man. It's gonna be black in there. You don't need the little chrome shining you in the face. Like, you could drive a car with a chrome shifter bezel and the fucking sun hits it and you're blinded.
Well, I agree with that, but to have it just so black in there,
It's murdered. It looks
tough.
I don't know. If I had to pick between this and the Civic, I would take this in a second.
Oh, I would too. At this point, I mean, the Civic Si isn't out yet, but I would
Have
be
you
feeling.
seen pictures of that? It looks like Subi Snails over there. Like Subi Snails wants to look.
Yeah,
it's just
true.
missing $20,000 body kit.
But that's the whole point of this video. That's the polarizing part of this car. If you're somebody who wants a more mature, grown-up, solid, refined, sporty compact, this checks all those boxes because it doesn't scream that you're a 16-year-old driving it. And that's one of the strongest points of it, and it's also one of the worst parts of it as well.